Hello everyone, I'm Beastly Eel, and in today's video we're going to be talking about the latest episode of My Adventures with Superman, episode 4. Had to think about it for a second. So there were basically two stories that kind of split off from each other and then combined, towards the end. So it's one with Jimmy Olsen and Clark going to Star Labs, and then the other one is General Lang and General Lane, General Lane and Lois Lane. And they're two very different stories that eventually come together. So Jimmy Olsen gets a holographic invite to Star Labs Science Symposium. They want him to speak on the talks of Superman. So the big thing here is Jimmy's thinking this is a great opportunity that he wants that they want to know from an expert on Superman and outer space in general, at least from the knowledge of Superman, is how he's assuming, right? So because of that, he wants Clark to be there, and Clark is assuming that it's just because he's the alien. And Jimmy goes, "No, it's not the reason. You're my best friend and always has been, and because of that, I want you there with me." So they decide to go. Jimmy obviously does his Jimmy thing, uses his fortune to rent a limousine and suits for the two, or buys suits for the two of them. They do all that and head over to Star Labs. During this, Clark is trying to hype up Jimmy Olsen, really trying to show everyone, like, oh my gosh, he's a great guy. He knows exactly what he's talking about. Everyone seems to love him, meaning Jimmy, specifically because of his not his abilities, but his works in multimedia, specifically as Firebird, and how everyone was like super impressed with the knowledge he has of Superman and all the things that he's learned, or the world has learned because of Firebird's um, interactions with Superman and the alien technology that has surrounded him. Come to find out, during this debate, apparently it's a debate of whether or not Superman is a threat or not. And this is a big issue because that was not how it was described. Nobody was aware of it, at least in Clark and Jimmy's eyes. So they were both taken off guard, and the opposing side was none other than Lex Luthor. So this is the first time we get to see Lex Luthor really be the Lex Luthor that we are expecting him to be in the show. So he's really heavily focused on um, showing the world that not Clark, Superman can basically decide at any moment that the world doesn't deserve something and that he has the power to just take it away. And he has a problem with that. And he uses Jimmy's words against him. And like Jimmy's like, well, he doesn't want to do that. Well, that's exactly right. He doesn't want to. Because it's based on what he wants, not what we need. And so really heavily focusing on the language that Jimmy's using and using it against him to show that Superman is a threat to humanity. And at the end of this debate, um, Jimmy's like, well, you know, we should have Earth be a safe haven for anybody. And that's when Lex Luthor goes, no, it should be a haven for Earthlings and Earthlings only. It's just very interesting to hear that and everyone agreeing. So then there was a big explosion and Clark disappears. I'm not going to get into that because it goes and ties into the other story. So we have Lois looking for her dad. So apparently her dad is really paranoid right now, thinking that Waller has finally found him, or at least is on the brink of finding him. So he's locking himself into the Clark apartment, Clark and Jimmy's apartment, and really just bunkering himself in. Well, Lois tries to look for her dad at the apartment. She sees he's already gone. She looks out the window and sees him going away. So she tracks him down. So he goes into one of his, I guess you would say, like, hideouts. It was basically I would say, like a warehouse that he had, that has all of his technology in it. Well, because Lois Lane doesn't know all the codes but was able to get in, the security measure goes off. And so he gets ready to shoot, and it turns out to be Lois Lane, his daughter. So the two of them get into an argument over why is she following him, blah, 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 and all that stuff. And it's during this that we actually learn the backstory of Lois and her dad. And apparently, her dad has really focused on training her to be the best she can be. Lois trying to grow up, having a real difficult time with moving constantly because of her dad's job, and mom either getting sick or getting sick and tired of dealing with the move and the general and either leaving or dying. So they kind of leave it up ambiguously where we're not quite sure if mom just up and left or if mom just died. Um, and it really kind of paints a picture of like Lois learned her skills as a reporter or used the skills that her dad taught her to be a great reporter, um, an investigative reporter specifically. So during this, they're having the conversation. That's when Damage comes in and tries to take out the general. He freezes him. They then take off. She, he then they get stuck in an alley, and he thinks that they're out of commission, meaning like the general. Lois comes up with the plan of going into the sewer. They avoid Damage, and unfortunately, in the sewers, there is the atomic skull. They then have to avoid him. They get out of the sewer, go for his friend who's been contacting him to give him the knowledge that Amanda Waller is after him. He goes there, and that's where Deathstroke is, waiting for him because apparently his friend was paid a lot of money or tortured, either way, to get him to bring the general there. That's when the general throws a teddy bear that apparently is a bomb that causes a massive explosion, and the two of them escape. And while they were away, they try to head to Star Labs, and when they do, the atomic skull blasts in front of them and causes a huge explosion. Now, this is where the two stories kind of combine, because that's when the two of them, meaning Lois and the General, try to fight off against Deathstroke, Damage, and the Atomic Skull, and that's when Superman comes in to help out. So Superman starts bashing everyone in, trying to help out as much as possible, and they seem to be successful. We get to see some of the greatest fight scenes in personally my opinion, mostly due to the fact, um, basically what they are is they're really fighting, but the fight scenes were beautiful. Like we get to see the general take one of Deathstroke's swords and start to fight with him. So they continue this fight. There's a lot of destruction in the area, and that's when the bad guys disappear, and the general and Lois use invisibility technology to escape the area. So Superman is left alone with the damaged Star Labs, right? To the point where everyone comes out, and Lex Luthor goes, "See what I mean? This, everyone, is the reason why Superman shouldn't be trusted. He decided that we don't deserve the technology here, and it's because of that that we are behind because Superman destroyed more stuff." Now, Superman's trying to explain himself that there was a problem and everything else, and that's when Lex looks at Jimmy and says, "Thanks for the pep talk, because if it wasn't for you, I wouldn't be in the position I am today and helping stop Superman from being a menace." And that breaks Clark a little bit, but it also, Jimmy doesn't know what to say, and he's stunned by that comment, and he actually just runs away. So Clark leaves. He goes to fly over to Lois Lane's apartment. He listens to a conversation between her dad and her about how he thinks Clark is weird, and Lois agrees with him. And that breaks Clark's heart. So he flies over to the top of the Daily Planet and uses the communicator to try to get Cora, um, a message so they can be a family. We then have Lois Lane wake up to her dad gone, and then we learn that apparently in the past it was Lois that left her dad. Her dad never left her technically. He might have trained her and tried to convince her that she was skilled and everything else without him, but in the end it was actually Lois's decision to do things on her own to the point where she didn't need him anymore. And so that's how that part of the episode ends. And then we have the real end of the episode, which was a Kryptonian mecha looking suit guy floating over the atmosphere or right outside the orbit of Earth. And that, my friends, is how the episode ends. So we'll be curious to see what happens in the next episode. Are we going to find out who is behind the mask, I guess you would say? Are we going to see Cora? And what's going to happen between Clark and Lois? We'll have to wait until next episode, but let me know in the comments what you thought about this episode. Did you like it? Did you not? And why? And as always, if you like the content you see, please make sure to like and subscribe down below. Other than that, this is going to be Beastly Eel signing out. Have a great night.